Welcome to True Tears Stories. Please like this video and subscribe to True Tears Stories. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The hallways hadn't changed. Same beige walls, same chipped linoleum floors that still squeaked under two thin heels. Marissa paused near her old locker, number 3 and 18, a number she hadn't thought about in years, and adjusted the strap of her bag. She hadn't wanted to come, not really. But when the invitation arrived, a glossy card printed in blue and gold, Class of 2013 reunion, she felt something twist. Not quite curiosity, not quite courage, just the sense that she had unfinished business in that building. She hadn't expected to be early. She wasn't trying to make an entrance, but she liked walking through empty rooms before they filled with too much noise. And she liked knowing she could always leave if she needed to. Her heels clicked past the trophy case. She glanced at her own face in the glass, barely recognizing the woman reflected back. Soft curls tamed into a low bun, mascara that didn't smudge, and a dress with sleeves that made her feel like she belonged in her own skin. 5 years ago, she wouldn't have come within a mile of this place. 3 years ago, she wouldn't have come without crying first. Now, she breathed in, slow and steady, practiced. From the gymnasium, she could hear music pulsing, laughter bubbling beneath it. She followed the sound, footsteps quiet now as the linoleum gave way to carpet. And then, voices. Do you remember junior year? The meltdown at winter formal? God, yes! Crying in the parking lot for like an hour, and then telling everyone it was about her dog. Wasn't that Marissa? Marissa froze just outside the gym doors. Another voice chimed in, amused and unbothered. No, her uncle. Or maybe her grandmother. Honestly, it changed every time. Like she was auditioning for trauma points. Laughter. Low. Casual. Like they were talking about someone from TV. She stepped back, out of sight. Her uncle had died that month. Car crash. Sudden. Brutal. The kind of thing that doesn't leave room for words. It was her first real grief. The kind that hollowed you out and replaced everything with fog. He'd been the only adult in her family who truly saw her, who never told her to smile more or just get over it. Losing him was like losing air. She hadn't told anyone at school. Not really. Just enough to explain why she'd missed a few days. But grief leaked anyway. Into her eyes, her posture, her silence. And high school doesn't handle grief well. Especially not when you're the quiet girl who never quite fit into the hallway hierarchy. She thought about walking in anyway, holding her head high, like every growth article told her to do. But her legs didn't move. She didn't feel weak. She felt awake. That laughter had been a trigger, but not a collapse. More like a window suddenly opening in a room she hadn't entered in years. And the cold air was clarifying. They still saw her as that version of herself. That shattered, flinching girl who cried too hard and talked too little. They hadn't updated their idea of her since senior year. But she had. She looked down at her hands, steady, unshaking. There was a time she would have run. There was a time she did. Instead, she pulled out her phone. The message she typed was short. You were right. I think I'm ready. The reply came back faster than she expected. I'll be there in 20. Want me to walk in with you? She smiled, just barely. Then turned, walked to the parking lot, and waited. 20 minutes later, a small silver sedan pulled in. She recognized the car before she saw the face. When the door opened, her chest did something strange, tight, then warm, familiar. Dr. Emily stepped out in flat shoes and a charcoal blazer, her dark curls tucked behind her ears. No clipboard, no name tag, just a calm presence. Marissa had seen her cry before, once, softly, after a breakthrough that had left them both breathless. She'd seen her laugh so hard her glasses fogged up. And she'd seen her sit silently with Marissa for an entire session when words felt too sharp to say aloud. Marissa walked up to her. "Thanks for coming." "You sure?" Emily asked, eyes kind. "No," Marissa said, "but I'm going anyway." They stood there for a moment, side by side in the parking lot, as the music thumped quietly from the gym. A beat too fast, a memory too loud, and then Marissa took a step forward. Not fast, not dramatic, just forward, back toward the door, toward the voices, toward the ghosts. Marissa didn't speak as they walked through the doors. She didn't need to. The gym was half lit in that familiar school dance way, colored lights bouncing off walls, a DJ tucked behind folding tables, and high-top buffet tables with half-hearted catering. Some faces turned. Not many, but enough. People scanned her, then flicked their eyes to Emily beside her. No name tag, no obvious explanation. That made them look longer. Marissa could feel the attention like humidity. It didn't burn, but it clung. Still, her breath was even. She scanned the crowd, half listening to the beat of a song from a decade ago, and noted who still wore their popularity like perfume and who'd finally outgrown it. Her old lab partner, Liza, waved with a surprised smile, which Marissa returned, small but sincere. She and Emily made their way toward a quieter corner. The edge of the gym still smelled faintly of varnish and old sweat. Some things never changed. "Want to sit?" Emily asked gently. Marissa nodded and lowered herself onto a folding chair, its plastic surprisingly cold. Emily sat beside her but didn't speak. They'd done this before. Shared space without pressure. Let silence speak what couldn't be pushed out yet. Across the room, Marissa spotted the three voices from earlier. Sarah Blevins, still holding court like she never stopped running for prom queen. Josh Tamber, graying slightly at the temples, looking like life had humbled him just enough to be tolerable. And Brianna Cho, picking at a shrimp cocktail like it offended her. Marissa didn't hate them. That was the strangest part. What she felt wasn't fury or betrayal. It was distance, like watching a movie she used to know line for line, but now couldn't quite remember the plot. "I used to want to disappear here," she murmured. Emily turned her head, listening. "Not just go unnoticed," Marissa continued, "but actually disappear. Like if I was quiet enough, I'd just dissolve. Be less of a burden, less of a joke." Emily said nothing. Just waited. Marissa inhaled. "But the grief never needed fixing." "I did. Not because I cried too much, but because I believed them when they laughed." Her therapist nodded once, the kind that held weight. Marissa's eyes drifted back to the group. Sarah was mid-story, animated, her drink bobbing in hand. Josh laughed too loudly. Brianna rolled her eyes. Marissa remembered how it felt to sit just outside their circle, always too intense, too serious, too sensitive. But now she saw it differently. Their laughter wasn't power, it was armor. "Want to say anything?" Emily asked. Marissa shook her head. "I don't think they'd hear it. They'd hear me, maybe. But not the meaning." But that's not why you came, Emily said gently. No, Marissa agreed. I came because I needed me to hear it. For a long time, she'd imagined what she might say if she ever confronted them. A monologue full of grace and righteous fury. But here, in the flesh, it felt unnecessary. What she wanted wasn't revenge. It was reclamation of space, of memory, of self. Emily stood and stepped back, giving her a little nod, a signal. Marissa rose, legs steady now, and began walking across the gym. Halfway there, Sarah turned and noticed her. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, followed by something unreadable. Curiosity, perhaps, or the slow realization of a moment she didn't control. Marissa, Sarah greeted, overly bright. You look, wow, it's been forever. 10 years, Marissa said plainly. Almost exactly. Josh leaned in, trying to soften the awkwardness with a smile. Glad you came tonight. It's so good to see you. You doing okay? That word, okay, it used to sting. Now, it just sounded empty. I'm doing more than okay, Marissa said, then added with quiet purpose. Even after the grief you thought was funny. The silence dropped like a pin on a polished floor. Brianna blinked, mouth slightly open. Sarah cleared her throat. We were kids. You know how high school is. Everything feels bigger than it is. Marissa tilted her head. No, some things are big. That was one of them. They didn't deny it. Didn't really apologize either. They shifted, uncomfortable in ways she didn't feel responsible for anymore. I don't need anything from you, she said. I just wanted to stop pretending that your laughter didn't land somewhere. And then she walked away. Not in anger, not in triumph, just truth. She returned to her seat beside Emily. This time, she smiled, small but true, and the night continued around her. The buffet had long since lost its novelty. Chicken skewers cooling on silver trays, cupcakes missing their paper skirts. The music was too loud now, the way it always got as the night aged, as if volume could make nostalgia feel more sincere. Marissa sipped lukewarm soda and watched people mingle in circles that hadn't changed shape since senior year. She could map the social dynamics like constellations, bright stars orbiting louder ones, dimmer ones waiting their turn to shine. She wasn't in orbit anymore. She didn't want to be. Emily leaned in slightly, voice low. You did what you came here to do. Marissa nodded, but her eyes remained fixed across the gym. I don't think they knew I was listening. That first moment in the hallway. They never do, Emily replied. People like that forget their voices travel. And their words land, Marissa added, almost to herself. The cliques had thinned slightly. Some people had already left, the early exit crowd. Others had gotten bolder with drinks, their laughter less sharp, their eyes glassier. The crowd had loosened, so had the masks some of them wore. From a corner near the bleachers, a voice called out, Marissa? She turned. Liza. She didn't look very different. A little more tired around the eyes, a little more certain in her posture. She walked over, alone, clutching a plastic cup and a smile that wasn't entirely sure of itself. Hey, Liza said. I'm really glad you came. Marissa blinked. Thanks. There was an awkward pause. Then Liza added, I heard what you said to Sarah. It was overdue. Marissa tilted her head. You heard that? Half the room did, Liza admitted, then laughed softly. You didn't yell or anything, but the truth tends to echo. Marissa allowed herself a slight smile. Liza looked down at her cup, then back up. I should have said something back then. I knew they were being cruel. I just didn't want to be next, you know? Marissa nodded. I do. It doesn't make it okay, Liza added quickly. No, but it makes it real. And real's a better place to start than pretending, Marissa said. Liza gestured toward Emily. Your friend? She's with you? Marissa turned. Emily was standing now, near the wall, giving them space but watching carefully. Not as a therapist, just as someone who knew what it meant to stand in the middle of old scars without letting them split open again. She's my therapist, Marissa said, not shrinking from the word. Liza's eyes widened slightly, but there was no mockery in them. That's actually kind of brilliant. She's seen more of me than anyone here ever did. There was a long silence, and then Liza said, I'm sorry, Marissa, for not standing up, for laughing when I didn't even think it was funny. Marissa nodded. Thank you. It wasn't an absolution, just a recognition. Liza touched her arm gently. You're stronger than any of them ever saw. And then she walked away. Marissa exhaled. Something light and slow uncurled in her chest. Emily approached again, brow lifted. Okay? Marissa turned to her. Yeah, it's like the room shrank. Not in a bad way, just it doesn't feel bigger than me anymore. Emily smiled. That's because it never was. It only felt that way when you were sitting inside their version of your story. Marissa looked around. It was still the same gym, still the same banners hanging from the rafters, announcing a championship from a decade ago. Still the same awkward dance moves starting in one corner. But she was different, and that made everything else feel manageable. I think I'm ready to go, Marissa said. Emily nodded. Lead the way. As they walked toward the doors, people noticed. Some offered half smiles. Others avoided her eyes. She didn't flinch under any of it, because she hadn't come to be seen. She'd come to see herself, clearly, and without apology. Outside, the night was quiet. A breeze lifted her hair slightly. They stood beside Emily's car, neither speaking at first. Then Marissa said, You know what the best part was? Emily waited. I didn't need to make a scene. I just needed to show up. And you did, Emily said softly. Marissa smiled. Let's go home. They drove in silence for a few minutes. The kind of silence that wasn't heavy, just thoughtful. The highway rolled out ahead of them, long and familiar. The moon was high and silver, casting clean shadows across the windshield. Marissa rested her forehead lightly against the glass. The coolness steadied her. So much of the night had buzzed with old frequencies, laughs pitched too sharply, glances that dug too deep. But now she felt outside of it, as if she'd walked through something and come out dry. Emily glanced over, then back at the road. You know, she said gently, grief is strange. It lingers in places you don't expect, even in gymnasiums full of stale cupcakes and old classmates. Marissa smiled without turning her head. I thought I buried it years ago. You buried the pain, but not the story. That line hit deeper than it should have. Because the story, that had always been the problem. Marissa hadn't just grieved her uncle. She'd grieved the right to grieve at all, to feel deeply without being labeled fragile. And when people made fun of her for breaking down, she learned to rewrite the story in their language. Until tonight. Tonight, she rewrote it back. The lights of the town passed by. A closed gas station. the neon hum of a 24-hour diner, and then the quiet rows of houses, one after another, each one lit by a soft porch light. When they pulled into her driveway, Marissa didn't get out right away. Emily didn't rush her. "I was scared they'd still have power over me," Marissa admitted. "That walking into that room would drag me back under." "But it didn't," Emily said, "because power only works if you let it." Marissa nodded slowly. "It's funny. I didn't feel powerful in there, but I felt present." Emily reached across the console, resting a hand gently on Marissa's. "That's harder than power, being present." They sat there for another moment, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. Then Marissa opened the door, stepping out into the night. She paused by the hood of the car, watching as Emily joined her. The breeze caught the hem of her dress. The stars above looked like pinholes in dark silk. "I think I'm done trying to prove anything to people who never asked about the real me," Marissa said. Emily smiled. "That's the start of real freedom." They hugged briefly, nothing dramatic, just warm, grounding. Then Emily got into her car, the headlights cutting clean lines through the street as she drove away. Marissa stood in her driveway a little longer, looking at the house she had made her own. The porch light she'd installed last spring. The front door she'd painted blue. The potted plant that hadn't quite survived the summer, but stayed anyway. And then, finally, she stepped inside. She kicked off her shoes, poured a glass of water, and let herself settle into the quiet. No masks, no armor. No one watching her from the corners of a memory. She didn't need to rehearse what she'd said, didn't need to reframe it. It was enough to know she'd spoken. In her voice, in her truth. And for the first time, the echo sounded like home. She sat on the edge of her bed, fingertips brushing the soft hem of the comforter. The house creaked faintly in the way old houses do, settling, breathing, remembering. It didn't feel empty. It felt honest. Her phone buzzed once, a message from Liza. Just a short one. "Thank you for tonight. You made me think." Marissa read it twice, then set the phone down without replying. Not out of rudeness, but out of peace. She didn't need to continue the conversation. The part that mattered had already been spoken, out loud, to the right people, in the place where the wound had started. She stepped into the bathroom, washed her face, and caught her reflection in the mirror. Not flawless, not fearless, but fully hers. There had been a time when she would have practiced a comeback, written it in her head again and again until it sounded perfect. There had been a time when silence from others had felt like a punishment. Now, it felt like space, like breathing room, like a door she didn't need to walk through anymore. The past still existed. It didn't disappear just because she stood straighter now, but it no longer dictated the rhythm of her steps. It whispered, "Sure," but she didn't follow. She turned off the lights and climbed into bed. The sheets were cool, familiar. The night outside was still, and as she lay there, eyes closed, she realized something she hadn't known until just then. Grief didn't end, but neither did growth. Some things break you, but others, like choosing to return, to speak, to stand, those things rebuild you, bit by bit. She smiled softly in the dark, not because the world had changed, but because she had.